Hello and welcome to the NDTV Dialogues, a conversation of ideas. Today we look at banking for the poor, complete financial inclusion of the excluded. The Jan Dhan Yojana has been a flagship scheme for this government, but we look beyond on the show tonight. How will it actually work on the ground? How do you bring in people who have been excluded for years into the Indian economy? How will they be part of the whole growth dream? Joining me on this, I'm joined by a distinguished panel. I'm joined by the man known as Banker to the Poor, Nobel laureate and Grameen Bank founder, Professor Mohammad Yunus. I'm also joined by Mr. Pramod Bhasin, founder of Genpact. He's also part of the Indian Angel Venture Capitalists, and he also heads the Skills Academy. From Bangalore, I'm joined by Mr. V. Balakrishna, formerly of Infosys. He's now heading the Xfinity Venture Partners. He also deals with Microgram, which is looking at rural entrepreneurs, and has also now applied to start his own small bank. I'm joined by Milind Kamble as well, of Dalit Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I'm also joined by Monica Hallan, editor Mint Money, and joining me from Ahmedabad, I'm joined by Jayashree Vyas. She heads the Seva Bank. Thank you all very much for coming in. And Professor Yunus, it's a great honor to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here.
You're the third Nobel laureate who's been on the show, and it's fascinating to have you with us. And Grameen Bank, of course, set a new paradigm when you set it up. India and many politicians had gone to Bangladesh to learn from it.
Yeah.
But you're now looking at social business.
That's right.
Tell us about that.
Well, social business came along with when we did the microcredit Grameen Bank, but there are other problems which are not addressed by the credit program itself. So we had to come up with other issues. So every time I see a problem, I try to create a business to solve it, rather than go through the charity route. Because in the charity, you do a good job putting money and getting the problem solved for a while, but the money doesn't come back. So I thought, why don't I create a business for the same objective, and then try to do that, then money will keep coming back. So if money comes back, I can return the money again and recycle the money over and over again, endlessly. So it becomes very powerful. That's what we started calling social business. Business to solve problem. It's a non-dividend company to solve human problems. And we create a lot of those programs. Some of them become nationally run businesses and so on. Like we have solar energy company, a small company we created to bring electricity in the poor household, in the villages. Villages don't have electricity. So we started selling solar home system. Very simple device, people understand very quickly. You pay monthly over a period of 3 years, and you pay back the whole amount, and that becomes yours. And you don't have to pay for electricity, you don't have to pay for kerosene, nothing. Today we have over 1.5 million homes with solar energy because of this company, Grameen Shakti. And we started with selling a 2 or 3 solar home system per month. Today we sell more than 1,000 solar home system per day. So that's the kind of liftoff. And it's not to make money for me or any of the investors in here, because the investors are not interested in making money for themselves, but it has to come back and cover all the cost and make a small profit so that it can be plowed back into the business, it can grow, it continue to grow. So this is one example. There are many such things. We are in the healthcare, we are in education, we are in vocational training, and we are in environmental issues, water, within Bangladesh. Now that idea is spreading other countries, and we do lots of things in many other countries.
Social business with a heart. I'd like to bring in Pramod Bhasin, who are described as the angel venture capitalist, which would seem contradictory, but in some senses also, I think, touches on the same things which are core to social business, that you look at how you can make you can actually change society, but perhaps make money doing it. Dr. Yunus, of course, says it should be plowed back into the business, but yours is a different concept. Tell us about that. And when we look at problems which seem insurmountable, whether you look at health, whether you look at the education system, whether you look at malnutrition, how can a successful business mind like yours actually make a difference?
It's a very interesting area because, you know, the whole concept of social business or social venture capitalism is gaining enormous ground. By the way, if you go to the US or the UK or the developed countries, the amount of money now beginning to think about investing in some projects is growing exponentially. Whether or not you plow it all back into the business, to me, the concept of solving a business problem, as Professor Yunus said, is very important. So, you know, we run a small fund which does precisely that. I run what I call a virtual fund with a colleague of mine. And what we're after is looking for ideas that are scalable, as Professor Yunus said. So there are ideas of lending money to schools to allow very cheap, low-cost schools to flourish across the place. You can't do it at the high cost, so how can you do that at a much lower? Building water filtration plants, which allow people to filter their daily intake of water very cheaply, very easily. These are all very scalable. I think what they often miss is either the skills to scale, the systems or the processes perhaps where we can help, certainly capital and equity. I don't know if we would plow all the money back. I think certainly the intention of a lot of people that we talk to who are interested in these areas is far more about, we don't need big returns. We're okay with a medium return, but the intention is actually quite different. The intention is to say, let's make sure this is sustainable. But because the danger I find is that if you are into a business where you are not making any money, is how long will it last and will it go away the day we take our eye off the ball? If you can build a business which provides a little bit of a return which you can keep investing, that's a very powerful concept. I also love the idea, I'll add one more thing. I love the idea of solving problems because there is a purpose to that. I think we all believe erroneously that the only purpose we survive in business is to make money. It's not true. If you look at people in healthcare and you look at people in microfinance, for instance, and you look at many others, they're driven by something beyond just making money. And I think tapping into that sieve is very, very important. And I think this whole entire area of social venture capitalism will take enormous ground in India. I'm seeing an enormous amount of activity. It's very, very encouraging.
I think what's interesting perhaps is re-looking at how we do business in the future and in the now, because we've seen from Thomas Piketty onwards, I think the whole concept of how capitalism has worked, how growth has worked in the India model. And Mr. Balakrishnan, I'd like to bring you in on that because, of course, interestingly, you're from AAP, which promises a new model of governance. But beyond that, from your years in business, and there's been one view that the Indian growth model has worked because, look, you've provided jobs, take Infosys, for instance, you provided jobs on merit, you provided jobs to thousands and thousands of people, and you've improved an entire ecosystem. Yet there's another view which said the growth model in India has benefited far too few, and we can't continue in this way and hope that there'll be a trickle-down effect. You need to do something radical now. Your take on that, sir, going by the perspectives you just heard as well.
No, I think if you look at the liberalization which happened in '91, it is a great thing to happen for the country because it opened up the markets, a lot of foreign capital came, a lot of jobs created. But the growth has been uneven. I mean, certain sections of the society were not able to get benefit of the growth. And it created a lot of disparity in the economy. And it's not new to India only. I mean, even in developed countries like US, they are still grappling with the issue of income disparity. So I think the whole game is how do you make sure the banking credit or banking system is available for all the citizens in the country. There was a challenge. The government has been pushing, the regulators has been pushing to make sure the unbanked come into the banking system. But it's an enormous challenge because in India, if you look at the rural areas, 75% of the people don't have any access to formal banking system. More than 50% don't have access to any formal or informal banking system. So how do you get into the banking system and make sure they get the credit for what they aspire to be? So MFIs have played a larger role, but still the size is small. I think with the new technology emerging like mobility, like the payment banks and even the Jan Dhan program, which is a good program because they're able to generate some 10 crore bank accounts in a very short period of time. So if we use the technology and if we use the ecosystem well, we should be able to fund the unbanked people in the country and they can become entrepreneurs. See, if you can create more individual entrepreneurs in the country, I think the income disparity will go over a period of time.
I want to bring in Mr. Milind Kambli on that because traditionally our whole concept of the growth model I talked about has been from top down. But what Professor Yunus and many others have suggested is that it should be bottom up. And I think Professor Yunus, when he first started, must have had many people saying this can never happen. And now these are theories that are being discussed in, as I said, the capitalist societies of the world. Your take on this, sir, because you started off very much on the junior level and you're now heading the Dalit Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Basically, I thanks the new economic reforms in the country, and they have opened a lot of avenues to the first comers, new people in the country. What happened? There was a very big license raj in the country. Some of products are making by some of companies only. But after 1990 reforms, the new economic reforms, almost the new companies came in. So we all people got the opportunity to serve the new companies, because the old companies, they were having their vendor base and all that. So for like me and like thousands of Dalit youth, they got the opportunity in businesses and all that. Now the biggest problem for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe people in the country and the entrepreneurs which I am heading is the access to the capital market and access to the equity and debt market. This is the biggest problem, because in India the legacy of lending system is a collateral base, and the people from scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, we know the all history of India. They are discriminated on socially, economically and educationally. So these people are not having any assets to give the collateral to the bank. So this is the biggest problem, to create access to these people, these new startup companies, entrepreneurs and all that. And the biggest problem in our country is for new entrepreneurs and startup is early stage funding. That is the biggest problem. But in nowadays, so many venture capitalists and these people are coming in India to support this type of entrepreneurs, the first generation startup companies. This is a very good sign in the country.
So we need a second generation of reforms, perhaps like 1991, like liberalization. Jayashree Vyas, if you can come in on that as well, because we talk so much about banking access, and the Seva Bank was perhaps the first model in India to, you had of course the Seva Women's Bank, to actually provide easy loans to women in the cooperative form. Do you find, when we talk, do you find that the real problem is that Seva and other initiatives like this are seen as one aspect, but how do we mainstream this across India? Why are these good initiatives, but which are localized in some extent to to Seva organizations or others like yours? Why isn't this part of the mainstream banking system?
Well, I think we are very happy with this whole concept of Jan Dhan Yojana. If you see, it is covering, first of all, opening a bank account and savings. It's also talking about insurance. It's also talking about RuPay card. It's also talking about pension. So this is exactly what has evolved over a period of time. So I would say that is the mainstreaming. Maybe not mainstream institutions, but mainstreaming the concept. Like, 40 years ago when we started, well, not we, I think women themselves, started a bank by contributing their own capital. They were just saying that we need a bank because they wanted credit, and they were borrowing it from money lenders at very high rate of interest. But the objective was, of course, ultimately of the bank was ultimately to help these women to come out of this whole vicious cycle of poverty, build the capital, build their businesses, and also expand their economic activities. So what had evolved over a period of time was that, we realized that it's not only credit, but they also need, because we saw that whenever, they were saving, they were collecting, they were, of course, expanding their business, and one sickness, one flood or one accident, and everything is gone. So we started this whole we started linking with insurance companies or providing insurance as a service. Savings also, we were surprised that, women were saving, and they were saving in the backyard, or they were saving with the neighbors, and they were losing their money. So systematically, when we motivated them, facilitated them by collecting from those type of small amounts. So this is what no-frill account is talking of. But the concept of no-frill account, we started from beginning, because women were wanting to save 2 rupees. The concept of BC, for example, we already had this bank sathis. So women from the slums or women from the villages who were leaders, they were allowed to, or they were authorized to collect savings and loan collections from doorsteps. So, this is, and this has worked. Now those women who did not have saving of, even 100 rupees, now they have thousands of rupees they are saving. So not only that, the whole concept of even financial literacy, that, we realize that
which actually comes from the grassroots. Right, Monica Harlan, I'd like to just bring you in on that.
Even the concept
of the banking from the grassroots. These are stories we never hear when we talk about the economy, when we talk about what needs to be done. These are stories which are not front page. We exclude billions of people, millions of people just because of this. Do you think it's also time for a complete shift in the way we look at economy reform and what the needs of people are, or what the needs of Indians are when we talk about a second liberalization or second wave of reforms?
Absolutely. I'll come to your question in a minute.
Yes.
But I just wanted to react to something
Sure.
that Professor Yunus and Mr. Bhasin said. The whole idea of social businesses and solving a problem where it exists at the grassroots. I worry about two things, and both are related to the government, unfortunately. One is that there is a disruptive power of the government to come in and say that suppose you are funding a low-cost school, but they will come in and say that you must have a school size of this, your teachers have to be paid that much. So there's a disruptive power that the government has, which could cause harm to such businesses. And the second, again, is that these are actually the work that the government has to do. And this is sort of a disruptive idea which says that, are you then not taking the pressure off the government by by providing a solution which is outside of the government, so that the pressure of the citizens on the government actually does reduce? So that's something I wanted to open up for debate. And coming to your question, look, news is what news is. If there is enough activity on the ground, it does become front page news. And you know, I would wait to see how the payment banks, which is a fantastic idea, which I think will explode banking across the country. And then we should see what sort of headlines we get once those banks actually are reality.
In fact, India is on the cusp of a huge opportunity to perhaps lead the world. And Professor Yunus, just to bring you in on that, we mentioned earlier that how there's a complete social churning as well. And I think that's why ideas like yours gained such momentum, and Angel Venture Capitalists and many other ideas, yours as well as Seva, which has been around. Because of the social churning, the feeling that we have to change the way things are working, that is at the core of what we're looking at here. How do we make it in a way which perhaps Monica's point is that as long as we do it in a kind of NGO, which is now almost, some would say, seen with suspicion in India, if we do it at that level, it's not something that you will find is accessible to people perhaps in rural India, etc., where the government has that penetration. So when you talk about social businesses, what about social politics or the social economy or social budget in the Indian context? Many have pointed to the fact that, interestingly, when India was at the peak of its growth, reform, malnutrition levels in India were higher than even Bangladesh, which is seen much more as a traditionally poor country. How do you balance the social needs with the economic needs?
First of all, we need to redesign our economic thinking, economic framework to redesign our society. If you keep on the same framework, we'll produce the same thing. Like the income disparity, it's getting worse, it's ugly. I mean, the high concentration at the top, and the distance between the top and the bottom is getting wider, and the bottom become bigger and bigger. So we need to address something which will work the reverse way. If you do the same way, it will continue to do the same thing. It will create poverty. It will continue to distance rich people versus poor people. So these are the things that we have created a world which is a money-centric world. All of us were chasing money because that's what the theory says. You have to maximize profit. You have to chase profit. So as a result, we have no time to look at social issues, the things that we see, but we have no time to look at it. So we have talked about another kind of business to solve problem without having any intention of making money. It's a reverse of the conventional business. It's not a mixture of the both business. The mixture, as we discussed, that if you can put the social and the money making together, you do less of both. So if you concentrate on one, like the social, then you bring the maximum out of the business that you have. That's what the power that we wanted to get. And that concept had to be taught in the school, that there are two kinds of business to make money, business to change the world, to solve problem. We all have the creative power to solve problem, but we are not using that creative power to solve the problem. We are using our creative power to make more money for ourselves. We are bringing technology to make more money for ourselves. If we bring technology to solve the problem, creative technologies will keep coming. All these problems will disappear. You talk about where is the money coming from. Just to give one example, you just passed your legislation about 2% CSR. Imagine the power of that 2% CSR. This is dedicated to charity. I said, why don't you use it in investing in social business? Imagine how many social businesses will be created, and all the business people will be creating those social businesses, not a separate group of people. They know how to run business. Once they take the money part out of it, they know how to use it to solve the problem of unemployment, solve the problem of poverty, housing, you name it.
How do you convince governments? Because, of course, your troubles with the Bangladesh government were well known. After you won your Nobel Prize, we've had Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, who was here recently, who was, again, virtually ostracized by an Indian government till he won his Nobel Prize. And I think one thing common in both of you is that he said the same thing. He said, I dreamt that child labor can be eradicated, and everyone told me it can't happen, but it will happen. And I think you have the same optimism. How do you deal with governments? How do you deal with bureaucracy? How do you deal with cynics?
I don't see government as an enemy. Government should be working with the same direction that we all want. That's what the politics is all about. That's what they promise. We help them to deliver. So I don't see if people start doing it, we'll be letting government free. We're not letting government free. We're creating example. Hey, this can be done. You're not doing it right. So they'll be pushed to doing that. It's not government or people. It's a government and people. That has to be remembered. That doesn't mean that just because we create a government and the citizens should be sitting on their hand, I have nothing to do. We have lots to do. We have to create examples. Government cannot create examples. Government can only replicate nationwide, statewide, that sort of thing. But people can experiment, show the way how to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's our capacity. That's our creative. Government doesn't have creativity. People have creativity. Government has a bureaucracy. They can repeat, they can continue. But we have to come up with the ideas and so on. Money should not stand on the way. Because, as I said, businesses themselves can create. We have joint ventures with large companies, many more. All the Indian companies can create social business on the side.